we're streaming live. So if you hear us in Facebook in the Clarity group and you have questions, plug them into the comments and I'll go in and check them. And Diane, if you could just kind of help me keep an eye over there. If there's anything I missed, maybe you can copy and paste them into Q&A for me here. That would be fantastic. All right, you guys. So we're going to do a proper introduction here of Warren because he deserves it every time. So Warren Phillips is the co-founder of Health Centers of the Future. As a credentialed master in geology, his background and published research in toxicology and chemistry led him to understand the impact synthetic chemicals and environmental toxins have upon the human condition. A career shift landed him in a position as VP of Sales and Marketing for a prestigious wellness company that reached millions through radio, TV, and the internet. After a short run of success, Warren felt limited and knew he had to grow further and duplicate the mission through health influencers and practitioners and other health evangelists on a mission. Sounds familiar. Warren fast learned his best resource for sharing vital information was via the internet and social media. With determination to get the message out, he is now a multiple 7 to 8 figure award-winning marketing expert in several health niches, or niche, however you want to say it. Warren also owns and operates Revelation Health, a company with commitment to helping people cut through the nutritional confusion and find real answer to their health needs. Headquarters in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Warren lives with his wife and 2 daughters, living a lifestyle and walking the talk. I love this so much, and I love even more the comment you made, or what you say here about nutritional confusion. I've never heard that before, Warren. So welcome back with us. I'm so glad to have you here talking about a super important topic. So thanks so much again for taking time with us today.
Yeah, glad to be here. It's an honor and a privilege to be a part of your tribe. Highly energized, highly on the mission, and it's quite an honor and a privilege to be here. We're excited, and can't wait to share anything and everything that I know that would build value into what you guys do as a group on your mission within your niche of functional health coaching, which is a powerful and growing niche. So you're good for you, for Carmen, for stepping up. And
how you got into natural health. So can you, can you hear me okay?
You cut out for a second. So how did I get into natural health?
Yeah.
Well, not easily. I'd like to say that God kicked my door in very, very roughly to push me into this thing. And I always look at all energy as positive. And even though we all struggle with that, so no matter what happens in your life, it's pushing you and moving you into the direction you need to be. So like many of you probably, I got very, very sick. I was I got my master's degree out at University of Montana, had a teaching assistantship and research assistantships, and was working for the Montana Bureau of Mines and Geology, and then moved into, after getting my master's in publishing and U.S. Geological Survey, I did a lot of basic, I like to call it chest thumping research. It really didn't have much impact on anyone. I thought that it did, so it left me a little depressed that I was cleaning up abandoned mines. After I graduated with my master's, I was cleaning up abandoned mines for the National Forest Service, for federal used defense sites, abandoned mine cleanup across the Western United States. And we'd go out there and do all these assessments, and it was loaded with mercury and lead and all these toxins. But literally, they were so remote. Maybe one person rode their motorcycle or had a picnic on these toxic heaps of tailings, is what they're called, which is the aftermath of mining. And because they did no vegetation or anything could grow on it because it was so toxic. However, maybe it would expose one person. I was getting more exposure walking around on it than anyone would ever play on it. So literally from doing that stuff, getting a whiplash accident, from cleaning up mercury spills at local pulp mills that make paper and cardboard, like that sort of work left me absolutely with one of those unexplainable illnesses that many of us have had, or have clients that have that unexplainable illness. All my blood work is normal, yet I'm still sick. That's a good marketing niche. Your blood work is normal, but you still don't feel well. Right. Great marketing right there. So I was that person. So through that drove me to completely lose my life. Fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, weight gain, sound sensitivity, autistic adult type symptoms, digestive issues, chronic inflammation, mitochondrial dysfunction, you name it. I had it. Was a non-functioning human. I was very involved in a lot of community stuff. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't have friends over anymore. I literally had to quit my job. And after I quit my job, I thought it was the stress, because that's what everyone tells you. You just stress too much, exercise more, same old story. It didn't work. I got worse, sold my home, and everything that I had moved into my parents' basement, became a millennial, even though I'm not. And that was supposed to make you laugh. And they had
it's mortifying is what it is. It's sad. It's sad.
Yeah. Then I had a moldy basement in my parents' house because they built on, side of a hill. So my symptoms went from,
As we're freezing up, but it's okay. Just hang in there for a minute. There you go.
There you go. So moved into that moldy basement, and everybody knows mold illness and biotoxins. So that had a even extreme. I was compromised already. So that led to more sleeplessness, more doctors, physiotherapists. I take pain pills and put a neck brace around my neck at night, laying there screaming out to God for answers. Completely, suicidal, I wouldn't do it because I have faith, and I said, God has a plan for this. Yeah. But, can I be bold enough to say, F you, God, because I don't like it.
Yep.
You got to do something. And eventually that energy pushed me into natural health. And I always had a heart to help people. I always wanted to do that. I thought it would be created in a different fashion, but literally from that, really extreme sickness and pain, I moved into the natural health field, where I opened up the things that you guys are now doing that's now completely open on the internet with Facebook Lives and all this great information. None of that existed back in 2005. It didn't exist.
I remember.
A little bit on the internet, and none of this was available. So like many of the folks out there, I was very, very sick. So that got me into the natural health movement, looking for answers, heavy metal testing. I didn't believe any of it because it was conspiracy theory to me. How could the government allow amalgam fillings? How could the government, the EPA standards allow for people to get exposed to this stuff in their home? How could, this off-gassing cause brain fog and like all this stuff? So it really, that's how I got into it. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. That's why I care so much. I can't say that I got into this because I wanted to have a business or, make money or not have compassion. Like, it just created a massive need and heart. And I'm like, how can they do this once the veil is pulled away, that the government doesn't care about the masses? It doesn't care, it's not built for that. Right. So I'm not pushing, the medical system isn't built for that. I love medical doctors. I love the medical system in a lot of ways, but it's not built to help people like me and the people that you help. So now I just, like many of you, like you, Carmen, super passionate, all the energy, I call it spiritual energy, which is the most powerful energy on the planet, to push ahead in this mission and be here with you today.
Yeah. And I align with you so much anyway. Whenever we start to talk, things you say, I just, they all resonate with me. And I went through my own journey, and the same thing for me from 2002 all the way up till, I think it was 2011 before I really had a really good idea of what was happening to me. The chronic pain, all the doctors, the hundreds of thousands of dollars, spent. So let me ask you this. So we obviously have a passion we knew that we had a bigger purpose for what we were going through. For me, I'm an investigator and a seeker. So for me, it's like, it's never enough to just say, okay, this is how you're going to live for the rest of your life. For me, it was, how can I find out what the heck is going on here? I'm going to, and because this serves the coaches that are listening, but it also serves their clients. How did you begin to even investigate the idea of, let's go with heavy metals to start with, because that's a topic where it's a big topic, but there's not a lot of information out there that people can trust. Some people agree with hair mineral analysis. Some people think that blood can do it. Like, how did you know or go after that definitive, black and white answer that was a problem for you?
Well, that was one of the conspiracy theories, like with the amalgam fillings, right? So once I learned that amalgam fillings off gas, essentially because of my background, right? A lot of this, there's meters that you can shove in your mouth that we would use on sites and say, oh, ring, ring, ring. It's above a certain level. It's 100 parts per billion, airborne mercury vapor, run away. But if you stick that same meter in a mouth with one amalgam filling and a cup of hot coffee, it's 1,000 times the EPA air quality. So I knew that heavy metals was an issue. I knew that was kind of my background of where I got exposed to things. I cleaned up mercuric oxide. So I knew that could have been an issue. Right. But it wasn't until a practitioner like you or a tribe like yours said, look, hey, read this research. Look at this heavy metal challenge test. And I literally, when I did my first heavy metal challenge test, and I was loaded with lead, and lead hides mercury in that test. I think you probably, have taught that, but the lead was really, really high. I was exposed to a lot of lead. You could be in the lead generation if you're, 45 and above.
Yes.
So I had high lead. So that between looking at the research, someone telling me, look into this, I didn't want to believe it at first.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what caused obviously the passion. I'm like, are you kidding me? So
Right.
the mercury amalgam fillings, how toxic the inflammatory reaction is with mercury and lead, and how they synergistically, poison the cell and the cell membrane. So when I started seeing that, obviously I started pursuing that path. I pursued Lyme, out of the gate, of course.
Yeah.
I think Lyme is best taken care of by, helping your own immune system. I have Lyme in my body, but I'm not expressing it.
Me
So
too.
a lot of people chase Lyme like crazy, but really, some of these bigger hitters like mercury and lead, and everyone has their shtick, right? Oh, it's mercury. It's not, I'm not talking about lead and mercury and heavy metals because it's something that I want to make money off of. It's because it really does cause, it's a major foundational issue. I would say biotoxins as well, unhealthy homes, those sorts of things, causational things that, cause a difference. In my brain as a scientist, there's got to be a cause, just like you, Carmen. There has to be a cause. If you look at life, what created this, what created that, I didn't believe I was a mistake.
Right.
I believe my body was created in a beautiful way to heal. So what was the interference that was causing that? And that's some of the chiropractic background that obviously moved in as well. I'm not a chiropractor. I'm actually not a doctor. I'm a master's. I never got my PhD, so I'm not actually a doctor.
Okay.
But
you could be.
Yeah.
Many of us could be after our experiences, right?
Yeah, it'd be very easy to do, but it would take off outside the mission.
Yep.
So through the research, I delved into the heavy metal side, did the heavy metal urine challenge testing. Am I cutting out?
Yeah, it's okay though.
Back.
It's okay.
So,
it's just a small blip. It's okay.
Yeah. So did the research, went in there and started to see the problems with heavy metals, did the challenge testing, noticed that I had very elevated lead, mercury still on the toxic scale. It was just a doctor's data test that we did back then. We still use doctor's data, but then we went from, when I saw that, I started doing, and I noticed when I did the heavy metals challenge test that I had a little bit of a honeymoon period that some people experience. And back then we were using strong, real chelators like DMSA. I would say some of our mentors and people that we worked with and talked with, and even had, was the late, he just passed, Andy Cutler, the late Andy Cutler. So I want to give him a lot of props. He wrote a lot of books and information and protocols on this. Love Andy, love his work. And we lost DMSA. So, that became an issue later. And that's where, we found some new binders and ways to detoxify the cell membrane and the cells and the brain. So yeah, and I noticed that big mental clarity taking DMSA, and what happened is a lot of the inflammation went away, even for a short time. And then when you take DMSA, you get some circulation, you get some inflammatory response in the body. But it was that, for me, it was that clarity. It was like, oh my gosh, I took this stuff and it literally made me like Superman. I literally had that clarity, that focus. I lost my ADD. Like, it was just this massive change. And this isn't anecdotal. A lot of what we do, I don't sit down face to face with people, but belief and faith and hope is some of as coaches, is some of the greatest weapons you have, and make the supplements effective, right? So belief and the placebo effect, if you will, like You the Placebo, that book, makes such a difference. But this was not just a placebo effect and the belief and faith in it. This was, documented change. And just so you know, I went down every route there was. I visited Richie Shoemaker. I've injected Epicrit. I've done phosphatidylcholine, glutathione pushes, 15 years ago, before you could, run and get all this stuff done more easily through functional medicine, functional nutrition clinics, and, everything that's available today. I've done it all, and I was chasing all those routes. But for me personally, the heavy metal side was what really, doing that long term, is really what transformed my life and gave me my life back.
Yeah. And I love that you said that, that you have to have that passion, that hope, and that belief that you can get well, because, I think that is part of the battle, is that people sink into this hopelessness, and then it's hard for them to see on the other side of it. So even if you give them something to say, this is absolutely proven to work, you have those people that are just like, well, no, I think this is just my lot in life. I mean, so I think it's important that people understand that when we're working with people. And I always tell coaches, you're there to empower and inspire people, to support them, to give them the cheerleading they need to move through this, and let them know that they can. So let's talk a little bit about, I want to talk about the mitochondrial cell wall. I want to talk about that a little bit. So explain how do heavy metals penetrate the mitochondrial wall? How do you even go after that? That's like some of that language is over. Mitochondria is really unhealthy. How do you explain that to people that this could be the real problem?
Well, I mean, there's lots of different ways to draw it on a map, but one thing that I like to do, and I can actually draw it up here. I have a couple little examples that I can do, but what I would say is to keep it simple. Mercury, works big for thyroid too, because again, I'm not the protocol science guy, but I know enough, because I've helped people. I used to coach people, by the way.
Yeah.
Charge $4,000 or $5,000. You just to sit down, and I mean the miracles that I saw. But for me, I didn't have that didn't energize me. It just drained me, and it drains many of the people watching. But I just couldn't do that knee to knee anymore. It just really drained me. But at the end of the day, what I used to explain to people is I would draw a cell, simple cell like that, and I would say how toxins would attach that cell, and what that does is cause cellular inflammation. Okay. Simple as that. And then when those toxins like mercury are sitting there, beautiful Hg, I think it's a double plus ion, so it'd be 2+. Kind of making a chemistry joke there too. So when these toxins inflame that membrane, good things can't come in and bad things can't go out. So you get a toxic cell. A sick cell. And what happens there is that it's no longer producing cellular energy. It's no longer functioning correctly. I keep it simple that I don't talk about how it affects the mitochondrial membrane. Man, for me to explain that would be a challenge, let alone to a client. But I like to talk about cellular inflammation, how these toxins are fat loving, and they come in and bind to that lipid bilayer that's around the cell.
Okay.
And that's where cell-to-cell communication happens. That's where hormones connect. These cells can also interfere with hormone communication because they block some of those receptors and mimic, and they become almost hormone mimics at times. So lead and mercury are just some of the highest and most toxic things to the cell and the cell membrane, causing cellular inflammation. When you have sick cells, they don't function properly. They don't create energy. They don't detoxify. And it's another one of the things that you can say is when bad things come out, it's like having a smokestack. Your little mitochondrial membrane, your little mitochondria, which is your powerhouses of your cell, are producing waste and toxins, and those toxins aren't able to get out. So the cell pretty much is like running a burning wood inside of a cell, and it doesn't come out. There's no pipe to release it, and that makes a very, very sick and toxic cell. So that's one of the simplest ways that I can explain how mercury and lead and other heavy metals cause. And there's other toxins that cause that too. A biotoxin can do something similar as that, a living toxin like a mycotoxin from mold.
Okay. So. Yeah. So you mentioned Richie Shoemaker. So is he still one of your main people to? Gosh, I remember him. I studied him years ago. I remember when he had a very elementary site. I remember thinking, this is the answer to why I have so many problems. It's got to be this. It's in this page, That was a long time ago. I did all the blood work on there.
Yep. We cut out again.
The blood work that he had recommended. Do you still follow him? Is he a good resource? Okay.
Richie, what I don't like about, I love Richie. I love his work. I'm so honored and blessed to get to meet him. But at the same time, what I don't like is the opposite of, our personality is hope and belief that the body can heal. He didn't want to hear about heavy metals. He didn't want, he was just very, negative when it comes to people getting well. A lot of the time. So if you read his books, if you look at the stories, I think it's very fearful. And some of the treatments that he would do were medical, right? And I did some of them, Epicrit being one of them, that knocked down my complement immune system, my C4A. Right. I remember the old C4A. So there's a lot of brilliance there. But if someone's exploring, the reason I bring that up is don't get sidetracked. Richie's information is really good. There's a lot of great science there. He's literally probably the person that brought mycotoxic illness on the planet because he had science to back it up. So it's very science-based, but in many states, mold is not regulated. Even if you have mold in the home, mycotoxins in the home, there's no, it doesn't have to be cleaned up. It's not like if there's a mercury bulb that breaks in your home, you should clean it up in a, in a work environment. There's no regulation in a lot of states for that. So Richie is really good. He's brilliant, but don't get caught up into, oh my gosh, you're going to get exposed for mold again. It's going to keep your complement immune system. There's no hope for you. Then you're walking around fearful and you don't want to go into a restaurant because it has mold. And now those things do affect us as individuals, but it doesn't give hope. A lot of what he teaches is like, if you get re-exposed, you're going to become sicker quicker, and a lot of these things, and people start living in metal boxes and they become chemically sensitive and they feel like there's no hope.
Yeah.
But there's so much hope. Your body is amazing. It does heal. And with the right protocols and getting out of the exposure and addressing things that cause inflammation, like your diet, heavy metals and other, toxicity issues, having a good, safe home. This whole house that I have is concrete and steel mainly. That's one reason I moved here. So no EMF, concrete and steel, no HVAC system, just point of service type units.
I see that.
Yeah. So just like in a hotel essentially. So
very cool.
That's those sorts of things. Not that everyone can do that, but there's simple ways to get well. And so Richie is a great resource. Just don't get sucked into the fear.
Yeah. I agree with you. And I want to say this too. I remember when I was there, I was all excited about it, but then as I explored it further, it almost was like like you said, it was like, clutching onto that fear that, oh my gosh, if I don't fix all of these things and get all these labs, which is what I ran out and did, I'm never going to get well. So let's kick off on that a little bit. And when you were talking a few minutes ago about hormones, because I want to get into the solution, because that's what we're all here. We're all here to hear. Just make a point to say that, when people are diagnosed with chronic conditions, like you and I both were, I had everything from fibromyalgia. That I was diagnosed with MS. I never had MS. I was treated for it just as a diagnostic tool. Chiari malformation, all of these crazies. How I know so much is I was diagnosed with all these things because nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. So when, people isolate those problems, well, you have fibromyalgia and you have heavy metal and you have thyroid problems and you have hormone irregularity and you have this. It's never individual things. Usually they're all coming from one toxic burden in the body. Don't you agree? If we can find out, like it's a cascade of problems coming from usually one problem, toxic burden or something like that.
Yeah. There's usually a source and a cause. And, for me and for many that, part of like the protocols with our doctors, and we have our event where we train on that stuff, and over the time, like we've been teaching and doing seminars for 15 years. So we teach those protocols, but we talk about, going upstream, right? And what is the cause? So, and there's big causes being, for us, what we found, there's three major, causes. Sometimes it could be what caused your problem to begin with. And it's usually just like us, probably at the same time I was getting heavy metals cascade. I had, some weird church cult-like thing going on that did that. I had a major whiplash accident that causes that. There's a lot of inflammatory proprioceptive stuff that happens with that. Yep. I had a girlfriend disappointment, so it's usually traumas that trigger things. So you can have an emotional or physical trauma, yes. Plus you have a huge heavy metal burden, plus you have, XYZ, what other biotoxin going on. You're living in a moldy home. So there's all these things that cause it. And usually what happens is you have to go down into one of them. And I think everybody's heavy metal poison. So I'd like to go there first. And that kind of gives a person a lift and even more hopes we can build upon, and doing some of the other things that you can do. You can run tests and give nutrients, but if your gut's inflamed from heavy metals, that people chase candida, but is candida really the cause? Maybe not, so I don't like those things when you drive in and say it's candida's making you sick, or it's your thyroid that's making you sick. We did all the thyroid blood work. My thyroid was bad, but why was it bad?
Right.
And that's why we go after these key elements being the biotoxin, the heavy metal, and sometimes emotional and physical traumas, which we don't particularly, treat or coach, to use the right language, because we don't treat anything when you're a health coach. Right. What we coach through wouldn't be the health trauma. So we go upstream to those major issues and address them first. And then we support the thyroid. Then we support the adrenals. Then we support the things that help people feel better. But we're very causational, like you, Carmen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And we just added trauma to our 7 essentials last fall for the Institute, because it's everything right, and they haven't addressed trauma, and that has kept them ill, the emotional trauma that they've been through in their life. So let's talk about this. Let's go into it. Let's talk about binders, and let's talk about cyto detox, and let's talk about what I want you to just, without even introducing the idea of me saying anything about it, I want you to tell us what it is. I want you to tell us how you came to find that this discovery, that this could be something that could help so many people, because people are looking everywhere.
Yeah.
In all the wrong places.
They are. And, you know, from my background in toxicology and chemistry, and my master's degree was on the binding of heavy metals in sulfide-rich sediments. And I helped out with PhD work where we would use exchangers, which is kind of exactly what synthetic exchangers. They're made out of, a chemical, essentially. They're polyethylene little beads that you can chelate things onto those beads, and those beads can bind specific things or exchange, sodium for potassium, almost like a water softener. So I was very into this binding of heavy metals. So I had this background, and again, it's amazing how my background and challenges led up to, being able to be part of one of the scientists that helped develop and have a patent pending on this product.
Right.
So when DMSA went away, we were very disappointed, because that was one of our major things that we utilized, complementary prescriptions. Actually, many of you probably know Designs for Health, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. That company. I developed a product with them called DMSA Synergy way back when Linda was at the company, one of the owners, and Jonathan Lazat. And so we had DMSA Synergy. They got shut down and had thousands of extra bottles, but they developed that product for me, complementary prescriptions. I was their number one utilizer of DMSA at one point. Douglas Laboratories, I think, was it Doug Labs? Or no, Thorne had a DMSA product. So they're all gone now, right? Yep. Because they did some special stuff to knock all those companies out. So that was like, for many of us and many of our doctors that we work with, this was a major, hit to how we got people well. Yes. And right when that happened is when we did all the zeolites back in the days, and we tested stuff with doctor's data. We know Doug over there very, very well. One of the founding, he's the CEO, Douglas Fields. So we're old school. We've been working on this for a while. So we would test everything, not guess. We would test and say, is this real? I'm okay with the placebo effect. If someone wants to believe in something, I'm not going to pull it out of their deal. And they're saying this fixed me and this helped me so much. Great. That's awesome. There's no reason not to have that. Right. But when you have science-based things, for me to offer it, I have to know that it's working at the beginning. So when I offer it to somebody, whether they're using something it's helping them or not, I'm not going to nix it, but I want to make sure that what I initially offer someone has some validity behind it. And when it comes to herbs and nutraceuticals, there's it's not as black and white. But with binding of heavy metals, it's very black and white. Does it or does it not bind heavy metals? Can you measure it somehow in the body, and is it excreting? So that was gone. DMSA was black and white. This stuff binds. Double thiol, group crab claw. It loves lead. DMPS, more affinity to mercury. There's some new binders that came out there now. They're prescription. Boyd Haley, remember his OSR that came out. So all those tools were gone. OSR went drug. They lost it for 10 years because of, it was helping autistic kids. All that stuff. Now it's being re-released as a drug. So that was where we were at. Having something that you knew that transformed lives gone. How heart-wrenching was that for us and all of our doctors? Right at the same time as when we got introduced to zeolites and the potential of zeolites crossing into the cell membrane and being able to, some of the new technology that we use, which is fractionating these zeolites into different sizes to cover the full spectrum of blood, brain, mitochondria, and gut, and be able to bind these in your body. So in the past, the big major issue that we had with zeolites is that they were all contaminated. And I wasn't a zeolite expert back then. We would use it. Zeolites, I can get into the science of zeolites. They are very inert. It's 10,000 degrees before they would break down and melt. They're like glass, essentially. It's a sodium aluminum silicate. It's aluminum, silica, oxygen. That's it. They're these really just inert things that can put in your body. They don't break down like a shilajit or a fulvic acid. Those things break down. They're carbon based. This is inorganic chemistry. This isn't organic. This is inorganic stuff that does not break down your body. So very stable and great binders. If you put For example, let me just explain how zeolites work and
Yeah,
why
I love that. I was going to ask you to do that.
why they're just so powerful as binders. They use something called ion exchange. A very clays do it as well. Zeolites would be in the aluminosilicate minerals. I'm not going to posture on all the science, but I love this stuff. Clays and zeolites, they're all aluminosilicates. They all use ion exchange, but zeolites are these master binders. They're called, they're sieves to just clean stuff up. And they use them in industry. They use them in water quality. They use them in, sewage treatment plants. They use them in even water softeners. So what happens is it's a honeycomb 3-dimensional structure. So it's actually 3-dimensional like this, but just on paper, they're honeycomb, they're a tetrahedra. And inside of them, what they'll do, so if they usually load them up in, for example, inside of a water softener, you're going to have Na+. I'm actually writing, you can do potassium too, but sodium's inside of here. So as an example, in a water softener, what happens is you have calcium and magnesium, right? They have a stronger charge, stronger cationic charge, positive charge, and this is what zeolites exchange with. So they use ion exchange for a stronger cation over a lighter one. Sodium and potassium, you use hypersaturation, you clean off a lot of these cages. Now in the environment, these things are loaded with mercury and lead and arsenic in the environment. So you get dirty ones, and people like to say, well, it tests really, it tests with exceeding EPA standards or CGMP standards with lead. Take it anyway. It's not going to leave. It's a permanent bond. When you've been heavy metal poisoned, you don't play that game. And we've tested over 20 zeolites, and they're all contaminated with lead, especially the powdered versions. And they're difficult to clean, and it's expensive to clean. We have a 7-step process of cleaning. So that's one of the unique things we do. But let's just go back to the science. Whether it's now magnesium is not going to replace a mercury or a lead, but it will replace a sodium. So in a hard water environment, everyone knows about hard water, it's loaded with calcium, magnesium, you get scaling on your dishes. This will come in, kick off the sodium. So now you have sodium in your water. The zeolite binds up, exchanges for the magnesium and the calcium, and now you have a bunch of sodium in your water. And then what water softeners do, they run their cycle. Remember how they run their cycle? You put the salt into the water softener. They hypersaturate the whether it's a resin or even a zeolite. This is what old water softeners were made out of. You'd hypersaturate, and with a hypersaturation, you're able to kick off the magnesium and calcium and replace it with sodium again. But you have to it has to be a 10-to-1 saturation. And in that saturation, there's a saturation indices that's strong enough, even though the magnesium bind is stronger, the saturation of all this sodium, say it's 10-to-1 or 100-to-1, is able to kick off and rinse out of the system. So this is what these sieves do inside of your body. And what we had to do is do something different than what everybody else was doing. We wanted to make sure that it got into the cell, so we wouldn't break these down small enough. So one cage is about one nanometer. And that's and there's molecular weight involved, and there's some other science to see if something can cross the cell membrane, and they do. But there's atomic weight and other issues to make sure things go across the cell. But for lack of a more in-depth study of this, 1 nanometer is about what can get into a cell. So one of these cages is about 1 nanometer. So what we did is, the first thing we did is we knew we got to get rid of all these. When you buy this stuff, some is more contaminated than others, but we had to make sure that all the lead and mercury was rinsed. So we had a 7-step process, patent pending process. I can't really get into that because the patent isn't finalized yet, but there's lots of different ways to clean this, and we did it 7 steps so that our final product here is empty cages. So these cages have now been cleaned. I like to say that people, you have tenants in your house that you don't want there, and you need to kick them all out of this building. So each room represents, a potential place where these heavy metals can be trapped. And you have 3-bedroom homes, you have 1-bedroom homes, you have studios, you have penthouses. So the penthouse would be the thing that stays inside the gut, will be zeolites that stay inside the gut and bind in the gut. A 3-bedroom apartment, will cross the gut and get into blood and cleanse and be available to grab onto recirculating heavy metals in the blood and find them and exchange them out. It's not going to bind your sodium. In the amount that's in there, a lot of questions that we're going to get, is it going to demineralize? Actually, they don't. There's just not enough in the stoichiometric chemistry, the mass balancing of it is just not enough. It's maybe 1% of your mineral, if you drank the whole bottle, it'd be 1% of your mineral intake for the day. So it's very specific, and it wants to go after heavy metals because magnesium, potassium, anything like that, lead, mercury, uranium, they use this in uranium cleanups. Anything that's a heavy metal, that's copper, cadmium, nickel, lead, zinc. We get a lot of nickel poisoning. Those are heavy metals. Sodium, potassium, they're light cationic metals, very, very light. So they'll exchange it out. So then you have the penthouse, like I said, there's stuff that won't leave the gut. And that's what we did with this product. We decided we had to do something, right? And we needed to make it measurable and real. So if you take our cleaned raw material and put it with all kinds of heavy metals, filter it off, and then measure it in an ICP mass spec, which was what measures heavy metal. Same thing if you do a urine analysis, these companies are using ICP mass spec, you run it, the metals are gone. It binds. It's simple science. It's funny when you research this stuff, they say it's so simple. This ion exchange honeycomb structure, it's so simple, but they say it's so powerful for so many things when you can do this exchange. And it also would bind other toxins as well. And what's nice about why we went with natural versus synthetic is synthetic doesn't have it doesn't have random sizes within it. So and sizes and structures. So this is much more random. So you're going to be able there's binding even within these cages, you can bind up things and toxins, and there's still so if there's, if you have, say, Roundup, which is positively charged, would come through there, it would bind that as well. So it's this random structure that at different sizes of the cages and some of the tetrahedral structure is what makes it a very multivariate binder for positively charged toxins. So that's another reason we went with zeolite, is its stability. We put a little bit of fulvates in this product because it binds differently, and it does bind heavy metals. And it's also it also is an antioxidant as well because it's an electron donor. So it's a great binder, but literally it's not stable because it's organic. It changes through the microbiome. And we added it, and the reason we added fulvates to this product is because there's some studies and research that if you add fulvates with zeolite, that the binding capacity of metals went up. It was better together than they were separate. So we added that to the Cytodetox product, which I haven't even showed you yet.
No,
but,
yeah.
So this is the science of Cytodetox. There's the bottle of it, and I'll get into some more of the science here and what makes this even more sexy. We really wanted to create something that, it didn't matter how much money it cost, how much research that it took. We wanted to create something that was best in class in this industry. And there's some there's a few clean liquid zeolites out there, zeolite suspensions. There's some clean nano zeolites. However, they're all one size. They're just 1 nanometer in size. Ours ranges from 1 nanometer up to over 1,000 nanometers. So there's a huge array. And the amount that we put in is 5 to sometimes 20 times the amount of any other product. And that the way we can get away with that is if you run this on an ICP mass spec and look for heavy metals, it's way below detection limits and standards. But if they would add theirs because they didn't clean it as well as us, it would start showing up mercury and lead because it's just contaminated. Whether they put small amounts in, but they never really cleaned it, because that's where the expense comes in. That's the hard part.
Oh, okay.
And the second hard part is breaking down the cages to 1 bedroom, one zeolite that can cross into the mitochondria and the blood-brain barrier, to having, 3 that won't make it into the cell, but will get into the blood, and then having the bigger units, all packed up. So they can stay in the gut. So we wanted to address all 3 areas, because what we've noticed with, we worked with just a strictly a small, tiny I would call it, there's soluble and insoluble zeolite. That makes sense. Soluble means it's liquid, it's inside of it, it's soluble. We worked strictly with the soluble, but we would get some symptoms. So we have now soluble and insoluble zeolite inside of this matrix at a very, very high dose, heavily cleaned, which makes it activated, which makes it really ready to accept other cations or ion exchange. It's really ready. So as a matter of fact, if you would take our raw material, and this is why Zeo is, I think the two words, what is it? Xeon? Yes, Xene and lithos means boiling rock. And these things hydrate, right? Just like am I on? Okay, so what makes these things, my point was this, okay, once you clean it up and these cages are active and ready to accept another ion, if you took our raw material and just added water to it, it would steam, and that's why they call it boiling rock. One of the reasons they call it boiling rock, that the reaction of it sucking in the water molecules is so reactive that the energy it creates, it creates steam because it's so active. It wants to hydrate. It'll suck in the water inside of its molecule because it's made up of hydrogen. And if you take a rock that was soaked in water, right, and you start boiling it, it will steam forever. So it's called boiling rock. It sucks in a lot of water.
Right.
So those cages become really super activated once you clean them and they're ready to accept something that you want it to accept, like lead, mercury, cadmium, copper, nickel, lead, zinc, uranium, whatever may be floating around in your body. So this is why a lot of people love it over in China and other countries because of the contamination and poisoning in the water, and they use it to, just clean up the environment and themselves. So what I like to say is that we have the small, little tiny, this is as small as I can get. These are the soluble zeolites that can cross into the brain, cross into the mitochondria, across that lipid bilayer that we talked about earlier. And in that, it's going to, by ion exchange, it's going to want to take anything that has a heavier cationic strength than the sodium or potassium, whatever it may be inside of that cage at the moment. So it's highly effective. And I want to get into the research because we did some high dose challenge testing with this, and we were able to show that it increased heavy metal excretion after, it was an hour, I believe. We doubled the urine excretion of heavy metals out of a heavy metal contaminated individual, and then doubled it 100% after 4 hours. And the half-life of zeolites in the body is about 4 to 6 hours. So we're able to show that at high doses, and again, you could drink this whole bottle, and it's way less than a tablespoon of a contaminated powdered zeolite that you would take, right? So every powdered zeolite out there, if you would take it, run it through labs, it would fail for lead. They're just loaded. And it's really hard to get that lead off. It loves lead because it's a very heavy metal. So we have the insoluble stuff, and then we have the medium size, and then there'd be multiple cages, you'd say 4 or 5 cages around here. That stuff can cross the gut and get into the blood and clean. And then you have multiple cages, the penthouse that sits in the gut. And, how about how when you're detoxifying and your liver dumps and you need to have a catcher's mitt in there? We've been doing that for 15 years. Richie Shoemaker is who turned us on to that back in the day. So we got to have that catcher's mitt in there. And there's other binders out there that can help catch as well. So, that's kind of the story about the product. And the other thing that we decided to do, because we were able to do it, we had a scientist that understood liposomal technology. We decided to take it and to make sure that some bigger cages that normally wouldn't cross the gut, that if you liposomed it, we could get bigger cages into the blood mainly and have a better chance of using the science. We know that, cell membranes love fat. And based on the pharmaceutical science, we knew that there would be better penetration and solubility in the cell. That wasn't an issue, but it's not going to hurt. But I know for a fact that the larger the liposome on some larger particles in the gut, that would definitely allow some of the stuff to cross that normally wouldn't cross the gut cell membrane into the blood. And that was one of the main reasons we did it. But of course, we liposomed everything. And for an image, if you want to see what that looks like, and the size is, about right. What we did is we took, this is the liposome, right? This is the whole liposome structure, the 2-layer liposome. And then there's the zeolite trapped inside of there. So when that goes across, this is more easily would cross a cell membrane than the zeolite itself.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we liposomed it just to add another layer of efficacy for the product, and it was something we could do. It's a way we could one up everybody else, if you will. And then we obviously put it in glass, and we use the glass tincture just to be all
in line with
we're crazy like that, so we're more congruent that way. Is it that big of a deal? For me personally, yes. I drink out of all glass. I got to let my kids drink out of plastic. I mean, it's just, why do that, when you can do it right. So that's the big part of what makes this unique is we clean it, we break it down through the molecular zeolite in different sizes, ranging across from the soluble small stuff to the bigger insoluble stuff. So we do that. We liposome it so that it has better deliverability across cell membranes and cell membranes, meaning the gut or your cells. And then we also added the fulvates, which increases the binding capacity and the array, and it binds a little bit differently. We added that to have extra binding capacity within the product. So
I'm a liposomal fan. I've got liposomal glutathione, liposomal vitamin C. I mean, I'm definitely I'm a believer in that. Let's go ahead and get to some questions if you don't mind, because I can see them starting to grow here. Okay, so Michael's asking, do you believe that hair analysis is accurate? Like, how accurate do you think that is?
Yeah, hair analysis is accurate from all the research that I've seen, but it's a puzzle, because you're looking for high levels of calcium, and other things. You're not really seeing the heavy metals come out. If you're seeing heavy metals come out, that's usually a good thing. So the interpretation is tough. It's hard for the patient to be motivated to do something as much. So I think it's accurate. I think it's great. But me personally, I'm always about motivating. We know that they're heavy metal poisoned, right? We know that they are. So what is the testing we can do that's lower cost to them, that's easy for them to understand, to show them and to motivate them that, look, this is your problem. Because even the doctor's data heavy metal urine challenge test, which some of you may do, I don't know, because that's not really something, because it's testing and there's ways to get around that, I'm sure. But even that isn't 100% accurate, right?
Right.
It's a great picture. It's a great snapshot in time, and you show them the elevated lead. You can see how it, you can predict them. As we detox you, your lead's going to drop, your mercury's going to go up, and then your mercury's going to go down. And when you can explain that and show them that, that really motivates them. I'm all into motivating the patient. Everybody's heavy metal poisoned. Everybody needs to get, this stuff out of their body. They're just, there's other people that are better. You can get into the methylators. You can get into all of that. I don't care how great your methylation, and I don't care how bad your genes are. Everybody needs to do it. Then you start removing these toxins, your genes trigger off, and toxins are what trigger bad genes. You get rid of the toxin, the gene, turns off. You methylate them, their bad genes turn off. You start removing the emotional trauma, the genes, turn off. So these are the things that we focus on. We focus on solutions, not the problems. So I like motivating testing. So I know it's a long-winded answer, but
no, it's good. It's good.
Yeah,
I did my first hair and mineral analysis test was over 10 years ago. And I remember when the results came back and she told me, you got to start eating red meat and you've got to do this and do this. And I was like, whatever. And then she sent the results and I'm like, oh my God, like I saw it in black and white. I said, that's it. I need to make some changes. So you're right. I think when we see something in black and white, it's motivating. And Connie's even saying, Carmen, you're speaking my life right now. Thank you for doing this interview. I'm doing the Shoemaker protocol, but so open to knowing other alternatives. And thank you for sharing the hope. She has CIRS, biotoxin illness is such a doom and gloom, and she will not give up. And I've been following Connie and talking to her, and she's been walking through quite a journey. So this information is going to be very helpful for her. So Diane's asking, however, is there a proper step or procedure for having your amalgams removed? Now we're going to be interviewing a dental expert, by the way. You guys know that I've got a dental expert coming in. So we're talking about binding, we're talking about binders today. We're talking about cytodetox, and how that can actually help. So how would that help and assist with someone getting the amalgams taken out? That's probably a better question.
Yeah, because you're going to get all the answers. You take Carmen. Yes, there's massive protocols there, and they'll go through all that. And don't get your amalgams out unless you get it done properly and you do all the procedures. One of those is taking, I like to add this into, I'm going to eventually pull this into the dental market. One of our influencers spoke at the last IOMT event, speaking about detoxification and binders in the gut. there. Boyd Haley was there. So we really didn't push Cytodetox too much because that's kind of his group. And
Yep.
you got to be careful when you walk into spaces. We want to add value and not become competitors. We're all about collaboration and growing this mission. Too many people are sick and dying out there and don't have the truth. People were perishing because they don't have this knowledge. So
Right.
So what you would do with one of the things that I would recommend that he might not say is making sure you take a really good multi-dimensional carbon product, prior to and afterwards. I like to have zeolite also taken. This won't bind. I would take it away from carbon because carbon does like binding fats. So I would take this product away, about 45 minutes away from it.
Okay.
But you need about 45 minutes for that catcher mitt to get in place anyway. So take the carbon, how you can add Cytodetox from what we're doing. I would take the carbon 45 minutes before your amalgam removal. Take some Cytodetox, switch it around in your mouth, have it in there. So if there's this stuff 1000% will bind little chunks of mercury that are floating around in your mouth, where the carbon will be down in your gut. So this is a great to have the soluble and insoluble zeolite in your mouth, in your tissue, in your bloodstream during amalgam removal. It's all my dentists that I work with, and we work with the best across the nation, are now integrating that into their protocol. But this new version, the new and improved Cytodetox, it's just about 6 months in the market. The product's been on the market for about 3.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Tested it through practitioners and health coaches mainly, or the end user for it. So that's how you would add it in. And then after your amalgam removal, you take more carbon and then wait another 45 minutes and then take the Cytodetox again.
Okay, good. I've got a dog we're starting to get some thunder, so sorry for the barking, you guys, but that's the way it goes when you work from home. Hold on a moment.
No problem.
You wanna hold on. Okay, so we've got kids and dogs, so that's the technology. But okay, Jane is asking ICP mass spectrometry with a question mark. I think she's maybe asking for clarification on what that is.
Oh, yeah, an ICP, it's inductively coupled argon plasma something spectrometry. So it's just a machine that essentially, when you inject water into it, has this argon plasma, which is like 1,000,000 degrees. I don't know, I'm making up the amount. And it just completely dissolves everything and creates a spectrum of light. They have analyzers that take that gas and spectrum of light, and based on that, they're able to see the concentration of, they use this a lot for heavy metals. They're able to see how much heavy metal concentrations in the product. So what they would do, like a zeolite, the process would be take this powdered zeolite you buy on Amazon, you take it, you put it into these little, you do aqua regia. Aqua regia is a process of dissolving that liquid. It won't dissolve all the zeolite, but it's a mixture of, I think, nitric acid and hydrochloric acid at super high concentrations. You heat it up, put it in a microwave. There's these special microwaves that in a big pressure container. So you have pressure, temperature, and acidity, and those things dissolve stuff. So you're able to dissolve and break off all the lead, and then you measure that, and then that shows you that the stuff's contaminated. So if you took our product, our raw material, and did that same process, you would find next to nothing in our product at all. So that's the level of time it takes to get our stuff clean. It's a very, very long process.
Right.
Okay,
cool.
So that's what it is. It's an analytical piece of analytical equipment.
Very cool. So there's some questions in here about, about amalgams and stuff, because I'm saving those because we're getting tight on time. We're going to save those for the dental expert. If you guys don't mind, I'd appreciate that. But Diane is asking, how does thyroid medication iodine drops work alongside Cytodetox?
Well, that would be great because we got to watch with Hashimoto's, right? You got to drop the autoimmune first, and then some doctors say you can't use iodine because it'll make people sick. What we found with our practitioners is you need to treat, but you need to correct the autoimmune first, so you don't go into a thyroid storm. Then you come in, and obviously iodine comes in and replaces the mercury on the receptor, correct? And so it'd be great to have that available when you're taking iodine, so that when that mercury gets kicked off, you have this available in the bloodstream And I like to take it 3 times a day when I'm taking it, because then I know I'm keeping up in the bloodstream. Unlike DMSA, I don't worry about taking it in the middle of the night. I just want people to sleep. I want to keep it simple. And that's why we created this product, so it was simple that everybody can take it. It doesn't cause symptoms. As health coaches, I don't even like telling people that they have, will get symptoms from it. But it said that at the worst case, you may get a mild headache, because you could get a mild headache. Because you start pulling heavy metals, you can get a little bit of redistribution. But again, the amount in here, it's not like DMSA where you're putting this huge bolus of material that's ripping heavy metals out of your soft tissues. And it's only in the blood, right? And soft tissues, not getting into the cell as much. So because of the bigger size, this stuff is all through your body, blood, brain, gut, so it really, and it isn't so much that it's going to cause that huge that concentration gradient where all these heavy metals start, coming out of your body. So if you take it for 3 days, Richie Shoemaker's protocol is going to tell you, and you have to, every 4 hours DMSA, every 8 hours DMPS, over 3 to 4 days minimum, so that recirculation that's happening gets cleaned up. I still like to follow that similar protocol, but if you took this just once or twice a day, it's not going to make you sick. Like if you took a big bolus of DMSA or got an IV of DMSA, and then you're sick afterwards, because some functional medicine docs are not following that protocol that Dr. Cutler created. So,
and I can attest to that, because I took when it was the first round, when you and I met at Mindshare a couple years ago. I had absolutely no problems with it whatsoever. And even coming back from that event, as we both know, it can put a hurting on your body and everything else. But I had absolutely no problems taking it. And I was definitely in a 2-week process of recovery from that trip, with tired. My thyroid was slowing down. I was stressed out. No problems with it at all. So if anybody was going to suffer from taking something, it would have been me at that time. But it's a great product. So Natalia's asking, what are your thoughts on using this product with a coffee enema as part of a detox regimen after removal of your amalgams to detox mercury?
Yeah, I love coffee enemas because it dumps the bile. And that's why you get to have the carbon in the gut when you do that. So when you do the coffee enema, you would have that. And again, anytime you're dropping heavy metals and doing dropping that bile into your gut, right? You have the catcher's mitt there. I use there's a product I could turn you on to. Health coaches can get an account with them. So off record, I'll give you the carbon that we use. I won't say it now because I want to have a conversation with you to make sure that, we're on the same page, but I have a really good one that we've developed, it's the fourth or fifth generation. We actually sold the formula to them, to a physicians only line. So we sold it, just because we didn't want to deal with it at the time. But, so when you do that, you want to have a catcher's mitt in there. This is my opinion. This is what we do. And then, so when you drop that bile, that catcher mitt is there when you do the coffee enema, because it opens up the valve, and out comes the bile. That bile, that's the toxic bile complex, and that has heavy metals in it. So you can bind a lot of that, but you're still going to have toxins, not fat-loving toxins like mercury, lead, and other organic toxins like pesticides. They're going to redistribute in the body. So now you have this. You'll have a little bit of this in the gut, which is good to have. The catcher mitt is a lot more, and that's why you need to take, 2,000 milligrams or whatever binder carbon, or humates or clean humates or fulvates or whatever you're using. I recommend a mixture of both. Then now when that bile comes in, you're not going to catch all of it. Some of it, bile is meant to reabsorb in the lower small intestine, so it's going to pull some of those toxins and cause distribution. So a lot of your biotoxic sick clients and patients, I feel like SHIT after I eat. Why? It's exactly why. Obviously you're having, blood flow and, issues, and it makes you more brain foggy because, your blood's in your gut, and you're already, your thyroid's not working correctly, and your heart's not beating, and recovering. Your adrenals are weak. So you get, when you change all that stuff, no matter what you do, you can't even take a shower and adapt to that. I remember being so sick, I couldn't adapt to the heat. Remember that? Oh my gosh. I forget about those symptoms. Like, you couldn't take showers. You couldn't watch movies. Like, you couldn't adapt to anything.
No, miserable. I remember if my feet would get so hot, like if I even just wanted to take a bath with some magnesium salts to try and relax, my body would overheat so much that my feet would turn bright red, and I would feel my adrenals burning in my back, and I'd have to get out because I couldn't handle it.
I remember just to take a relaxing bath again. I mean, this is why we want to get out there. So
that's true.
Anyway, you're not going to catch all that. So if you're taking the Cyto Detox, I would take, so here's the protocol I would do. And again, Carmen, you can, massage it as you need. I would take the before you would do the enema, I would take the carbon 30 to 45 minutes before so that it's set up in the right location within the gut, then do the coffee. And as you do the coffee enema, say it's 45 minutes later, right when you're doing the coffee enema is when I would take the zeolite. The zeolite's going to get into your bloodstream immediately within a few minutes. So it would be right there. And then when the bile drops, it's going to start absorbing immediately as well. So right as you took the coffee enema, that's when I would take the zeolite. And I would take a little higher dose. I would do 2 full droppers to get that up in there. And then I would follow it up later with another, half dropper or a dropper. Depends on the person. The guy that we, and one thing I want to tell you before I forget is how to take it. Maybe we can end with how to take the product.
Okay. And then I want to say this too. I want to ask this because I do have another appointment. And so I see all the questions coming in, but I would like to ask Warren, if I can take these questions from the chat and put them into an easy out with the replay.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be my honor and privilege to do that.
That would be great. That'll be a way for you guys to have this in writing as well, and then we can kind of stick to schedule. But let's go ahead and talk about how to take the Cyto Detox. Let's go into that.
Okay, and what I like it's in a box, right? So I just wanted to make sure the packaging, we try to do that. If you utilize it, we have flyers and how to take it and all that stuff. But here's the main thing that I want everyone to know today. This has both insoluble and soluble zeolite in it. And what I like to do when you first get the product and you tell your clients to do this, your health participants, is I want you to strike it and activate it, succuss, like you would a homeopathic remedy 20 times on the hand. And what that does is it's not only, and you're putting energy into zeolite. Zeolite's going to take that energy on. So that's going to, in my opinion, it's going to activate it. It's going to apply that energy and make it even more of an attractant. But what you're also doing is you're resuspending and redistributing the heavier, the big gut binder zeolites that are in the product. Because if this thing sits for 6 months, over time it's like clays. They're going to start settling out like in a pond. So right. you want to activate this when you first get the product. Make sure they activate it 20 times on their hands. That completely activates it. That resuspends everything homogeneously throughout the product. And then in the future, before every dose, I just tell everyone to do it 5 times. Shake it up, and so you have a nice even distribution of some of those larger particles. And the dosing on it, what I do is keep it simple, half to 1 full dropper, which is a 0.5 milliliter. It has graduated stuff on it, so it can tell you that.
Okay.
It's 0.5 to 1 milliliter, so a half dropper to a full dropper, 2 to 3 times a day. I just keep it that simple. And if a client is getting some symptoms, you want them to take it more often. Usually that fixes it up.
Okay. All right, we're going to do one more question here. Diane is saying from Facebook, can you explain what the steps, oh, we already did that. Would you take before, after? Never mind. Let me go back. Detox, how would you use it? What limitations or concerns would you have with it? Shoot, whenever someone asks a question, it just flies off.
Okay, go ahead.
Where did it go?
I can hear you.
Okay, and then it says, you mentioned some things you tried to improve on. So would you use the old Cyto Detox, or would you just go ahead and move forward and get the new product?
I mean, I would go with the new product for sure.
Okay.
And and if someone has our old product and they would like to get an exchange, I would be more than happy for your health tribe. Don't put this out there in the world because I'm not made of money.
Right.
But
right.
But for your tribe and people that are listening to this, if you have an old version and it's brand new or whatever, not if you took half of it, of course, but if it's an unused product and you would like to exchange it, I'd be more than happy to do that for your tribe, Carmen.
Okay.
You're so gracious to us. We would want to be gracious to you. So,
well, I appreciate that. And
but I would choose this one for sure.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, you gave me 6 bottles, I think. And I think I gave everything away, but I had 1 left. And I thought, I'm going to go ahead and get the new one. I mean, I'm that sold on it. Absolutely.
This has 10 times the amount of zeolite in it. 10 times is the old one. So.
Okay. So one question I wanted to ask, I mean, it's maybe this is a selfish question here, but should everybody be doing this protocol? And is it something that you do and then you feel better and then you don't, and then you take a break, or is it something that's for life? Or like, what is how often are you going to be using this product?
I mean, heavy metals are constant, right? So you're always going to be detoxing, and you always want to be taking this product, and you can pulse on and off, right? You just do, just like with anything else. If you want to rest your body, taking too many supplements, detoxing all the time, that's not good, right? I mean, if you're somebody that's really heavy metal poison and you need to stay on it because you're circulating and it makes you feel better, do it. But what I like to do, you can do a month on, a month off. You can do 4 days on, 10 days off. You can do lots of different cycling with this. I prefer, if you're a health coach and you're teaching someone, I would teach them cycling. If it's just an end user that's just going to take the product, just take as directed, 2 to 3 times a day when you get up in the morning before you get to bed. Keep it simple, because if you're getting this into them, you're transforming their life. You're moving the heavy metals out of the body. We have our event. We are going to teach on this at the event. The biochemist, the PhD biochemist, he's a PhD, I'm not. And one of the inventors is going to be speaking about this product, and also on re-inoculating the gut post-fast. Our next seminar in November, and I know, Carmen, you wanted to introduce this to the tribe.
Yep.
We found a system, because we have 60 doctors that are in our major tribe, and we test everything with them, but we found a way to capitalize on this new niche in healthcare, being fasting ketosis. Ketosis is the number one, with intermittent fasting, number one, search term online. Intermittent fasting, number one new diet that's out there that your end users are looking for. So we completely educate not only on all the different fasting procedures. We have Joseph Anton, who is at Mindshare, talking about the fasting mimicking diet. We have Dr. Jason Fung there. We have Naomi Whittle, who is you want to meet her, especially if you're a woman business entrepreneur. She's nuts, and she's hard to get at events. Fung, almost impossible to get at events. Joseph will come. We had Walter Longo, but he was in Italy, and we tried to throw money at him. He still wouldn't come, because, we wanted to get Walter there as well. So we put this all together to deal with the protocols, the science of it, how to capitalize on it, how to create online social media groups to grow. And this is one of the lead gens that some of our practitioners are using. So, that's what this event's about, is this. And it's really hard to pull this one off. So we're really excited about it, capitalizing on this niche, the protocols, the science. And then we have, some other, speakers there, and business people and hiring, and, some other stuff like that as well. But,
and the link's in there. I've got the link in the chat for you guys for the product, and I've got a link for the seminar, and there's a $200 coupon. Please go to the links, grab them, but know that when we do the replay and when I post everything out, you guys, all of this stuff will be shared in there. So, don't worry. I promise I'll get it to you.
I got the shameless plug in there, so that was good.
Yeah, absolutely. You're kidding. I mean, that's what I agree 100% with learning about this. This is stuff that we need out. We need people out there learning about this so we can spread the word. The more people that know about this, the better. So I've got everything screenshotted for questions. I'll go ahead and send those your way. And I appreciate you so much taking the time to answer them, for being here with us, and just the work you're doing in general. Because I just, when you tell your story about your sickness and what you went through, it brings back all of those, the memories for me too, and the hopelessness, and the, there's got to be something bigger and better. And I know there's a lot of coaches out there that have gone through the same thing. And just thank you so much. Thank you for everything. And we'll be in touch, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you
So much,
everybody.
Go change the world, guys. God bless.
We'll do it. Bye. Thank you.